so this deals with her relationship. Now, if you notice in the book that she reads, sometimes she tends to jump back and forth. So it's not always a chronological thing. She'll talk about a relationship and she'll kind of, there is a forward movement progress of the story, but sometimes she'll jump back and forth through events in the story, sort of focus on issues that are areas where she wants you to draw attention to. Or she'll jump back to something that happened to her in the past because it kind of connects to the things she's talking about now. So there are the two chapters are called Anthony, my Italian Greek tragedy, and relationship notes, a relationship. So the first one is called Anthony, my Italian Greek tragedy. So it truly discusses her interrelational relationship with Anthony, right? She describes it as a Greek tragedy. She talks about the fact that she has done many types of readings, types of books and stories that she had been exposed to in both university and college, but she never really understood what Greek tragedies were. And she says this is an example of a Greek tragedy, and she writes the chapter like it's one, right? She talks about meeting a man named Anthony at the club, and she knows the relationship has its problems from the beginning, right? First is ethnicity. He's of Italian background, and she knows that she will never be accepted in that life. That she'll never be someone that he'll bring home to his family or his friends and say, "This is my girlfriend," right? So she's aware of that. The second thing she is aware of his relationship. He has a girlfriend, and she's the other woman, right? When they first meet and they're flirting and they're talking, Anthony talks about having a girlfriend but ending it, but then she does. He never really does, and just accepted that this girlfriend he has is someplace else, and eternity accepted as well. Now, remember, um, it's a couple of things here that when we look at this, that people might say, "Oh, I can't believe she did that." But remember, Trinity says in her book, and she says it several times, "This is my story. It's raw. I've not always made the best decisions, and I've always not always acted in the best manner." This is one of the times that she will allude to that. While she takes no shame in the being the other woman, because her attitude is that's not my problem. That's Anthony's problem. If Anthony chooses to see me, then Anthony needs to resolve why he's cheating on his girlfriend. But it's something she also acknowledges that later on in the book that it's not something she's necessarily proud of. That this is another example of just a poor choice she's made, based upon, you know, her experiences and things that have colored how she views relationships. And we'll talk more about that in the second chapter after this one. She also connects the relationship to the myths about Black female sexuality. She talks a lot about Anthony and the reason why they're together. And throughout this chapter, she identifies that Anthony is an example of looking at Black women in as raunchy, animalistic, ungodly, but only for sexual deviance. That there's something sexually powerful about Black women that specifically white men who are interested in Black women are looking for. And then Anthony is an example of that because Anthony seems to be a pretty good guy, but then he's sometimes very mean to her. Then, he's okay, but then he's kind of mean to her. Like he goes over to his condo, it's late, and he goes, "Do you need a lift?" And she goes, "No, yeah, because I'm about to give you one." And then he gives her money to take a cab home. So it's this weird kind of dynamic where he's kind of being a jerk to her and she's aware of it, but she kind of just puts up with it. Right? But also, she draws attention to the fact that this is not a fair comparison. That uh, this time of sort of sexual freedom and having many sexual partners is sometimes a rite of passage for many women, and that she can't live that kind of freedom. That it's not she doesn't have the privilege to be the girl who hooks up with a guy at night. She talks a lot about hookup culture in university, and just dating and meeting somebody and having sex and moving on. And she says that, she remembers at university seeing people, it's called the walk of shame, where, after there's been a sexual encounter between two people, you see, maybe girls walking out, uh, wearing party clothing, stumbling home, guys kind of stumbling home. But it's not something that she says that, when you see a white person do it in society, it's thought of as something good. When she does it, the other connotation is that she's a Black woman. Is she a prostitute? Is she a sex worker? And she's got to deal with all those things that she doesn't have the freedom to do it. Um, she also talks about there are no real examples of Black female empowerment in media. She specifically talks about Sex and the City, which was a TV series about women in their mid 30s who, talked about sex and female liberation. They could do that. They have many partners, and that was just normal for them. She says that there's never been something like that for Black women. When it's done in a negative um, connotation. It's punitive. It's meant to look badly. She mentions Tyler Perry, who is a writer who makes lots of movies about Black people, and she calls him out because he says that when she makes movies, he makes the Black women who are more promiscuous suffer. She's a specific movie that you read in the book that says that the woman who cheats on her husband gets AIDS, and she's got a history of doing that, which is reaffirming that the fact that Black women shouldn't do that. She goes, "Where's my Sex in the City? Where's my thing?" Now there may have been shows. Now I know there's one I haven't seen it called Insecurity that kind of deals with that issue. Um, but she's saying at the time of her writing this book or her growing up, there just wasn't people there. So how does one see herself and identify her own sexual identity if there's no examples of it except for these stereotyped negative examples of Black women? It also shows her insecurities and low self-esteem to continue in a relationship where Anthony was using her and dealing with his own issues but wanting to be with a Black woman. Now, it talks about on these pages, but later on in the book, it when they are intimate and they're talking after, um, he admits that he has his girlfriend. She's nice, but he doesn't really like her because he says, I like Black women. He goes, but I can't bring a Black woman home because my mom would kill me. My grandma would kill me. So it's an example of this rawness to show that so she hears that and says that that she's just a tool. Later on in the book, she even finds out that he's been doing this with other girls. That he does this kind of rap where he approaches Black women and shows how cool he is and hype and whatever to be with them because of his attraction to Black women, but him not wanting to bring those Black women into his life. Okay, so she breaks up with him. She says that she does know about Anthony later, that he does eventually marry a Black woman and he's happier. But it's about, like, again, her having to deal with this other aspect of in a relationship with a man who's cheating on his girlfriend, who doesn't really love her but is with her because that's what people expect, and his own issues of being attracted to Black women but not being able to say this is what I like and I'm gonna date and marry one and that's it. So this is also an example of the rawness and her openness as she wishes to explore in order to give the autobiography more authenticity, right? So she's doing this to get us to exploit to get us to trust her more. Again, it can be graphic. She talks about her bipartisan graphic manner, but it's the idea this is that she says that this is a sexuality and it's a rawness to it, and she draws just the fact that in media, sexuality of Black people is really played down, right? It's either super hyper animalistic, but it's not shown as something as normal. And she's telling the story to talk about the fact that she's a Black woman, she has needs, she has sexual desires, she has all those things, and they shouldn't be looked down upon because of her race. So that's that chapter, right? And again, it's another example of how she is taking a literary. She uses examples of how a Greek tragedy would be written, and she infuses it in this autobiography again, just to show her skill of, like, if this is a tragedy, I'm going to write like one. Um, for Relationship, it's a complicated chapter because it talks about explore her relationship with her absentee father. Now we know that Eternity is biracial. Her mom is Pakistani. Her dad was Black, but he never was around, right? His mom, they got together, but he didn't stick around. Um, Her father not around, but he had many children, and Eternity is trying to learn more about him, right? A connection to her Black identity, right? She wants to know more about her father. This is an aspect of her identity that she really needs. She's defined herself as. Remember, she says, I didn't know. She knows that she grew up in a South Asian culture. She knows she has a background, but she's very into the idea that, look, I'm a Black woman. I perceive as Black. I want to know more about it. The relationship does not go well with her father. Her father's flighty. She meets other children that he's had who talk about the relationship with him. He kind of comes in and out of a relationship. And I think when you look at that kind of flightiness of relationship, she's kind of sits in the beginning of the chapter, she talks about her father and how he's just inconsistent. And the purpose of doing this is because she's going to come back to this kind of relationship later. Because she's going to talk about sort of other relationships she's had with men and how her relationship with her father is an example of it, right? She talks about her tendency to allow for men to disrespect her in relationships is a connection to her father. Her father, because he's always been away, he's always been absent, he's always not been around, she tends to choose men who are all those things, a repeat of those things. Men who can't or control, men who are going to let her down, men that are going to hurt her, because she's wanting those men to change and to become a part of her, and to, if she can make these relationships work, she can make her father love her, because her biggest, I guess, her biggest I think tragedy she has or pain that she's dealing with is that um, not having this man around her life, not having this man who kind of doesn't know when her birthday is, but at some well, takes some a weird perverse pride in having eternity and having her all these different children that he's had are running around with him not being responsible or not really showing connection to them. All right. So again, these pages kind of talk about it on pages 164 to 165. So it talks about, I think, three relationships, two with men and one with her friend. So first talks about Nathan as an example of that type of relationship. Nathan's a guy she meets at the club, but when he always shows up, he never shows her any attention. He tells her to meet her at a club, but he can't go there. Uh, they meet one night, they talk, and he says, I'll be back, but he's never back on the weekend. When he's back, he kind of texts her, meet me here. She doesn't go. One time she even stays in London to wait for him to show up, but he never shows up. So it talks about the fact that she's purposely, as a woman, deals with this disappointment, and she takes the attitudes that women have always taken, where it's if the relationship is bad and you're being treated poorly, you kind of deal with it and you kind of internalize it and say, well, I guess that's just how it is, instead of demanding more and wanting more. Right? So it's an example of her role in it. So she says, well, Nathan is a guy that's, just not there and distant and a jerk. She acknowledges that, I've allowed that to happen. I've allowed that kind of relationship to fester. And I don't say when I want, I just think that it's my job to put up with his disrespect, right? Amir is another example. After Nathan, she meets Amir, but he's a different type of control. He's a sweet man. He's kind. He's nice. Wants to, drives a cab to take care of his family, all those things. But he's also super controlling. Wants to know where she is. Doesn't like the way she dresses. Doesn't like when he goes out to parties. Um, he's always busy and he's always talking about, we need to work because I need to make money for my family. He expects her to adhere to a very strict Muslim upbringing and tradition and values that she's not, and she doesn't want to, but he expects that. He even he meets the mother. The mother kind of likes him, but her mother says he's a nice guy, but he's just not for you. And even Amir offers to marry her because it's like, I'll marry you. This will make everything better. And Eternity takes almost a mother role, but she's there to, the relationship isn't about them dating. It's about, him coming over and then sleeping and eating food because he's got to drive a cab, because he's got to, work 2, 3 jobs with his family, because he has to stay for a paper. So it's like she takes this motherly role of taking care of this man, right? So she has one role where she feels this man's not paying her any attention. Another relationship where a man's paying so much attention that he's got a controlling, and now his demands on her time is take care of me, feed me, listen to me gripe, don't go out, don't do that. When I need you to be there, right? So these two things are going on where she's trying to um, deal with this man trying to control all aspects of her life. Now, again, Amir's not a bad guy. He's a pretty decent guy, but she says the control is different. Then she talks about her friend, with her friend Taz, that how that ends, that she doesn't recognize that. She says that Taz, when she went away to Western with Taz, she went because Taz was her friend and she needed a security blanket. But Taz was not as free as Eternity. Taz was not raised in a family that encouraged her to have a free thought in mind. So Taz would go to Western and party, 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 but when she had to return to Toronto, would freak out because it meant all those old structures are put back into place. So she almost overindulged in this party lifestyle. I think it's to the point where it gets so bad between them that they don't hang out anymore. They used to make movie popcorn and talk about relationships and have each other's back, and then they stopped doing that. Taz goes out with a new group of friends by herself. Taz even steals one of her dresses and doesn't say anything about it. And she says that basically, because she was so entrenched in her own stuff, that she basically forgot about her friend. And basically, wasn't a good friend to her because her friend needed her to understand her journey versus Eternity saying, well, you should be just like me. And they end their friendship, and it's not anything overly dramatic. They just stop hanging out, and then they leave the house they have together, and they don't ever talk again. All of these things interconnect, and again, you'll see this on pages 180 to 181, that she says this is all about her father, that she has made choices that involve her choices about relationship from Joshua, which she'd been in high school, to who's the other guy? There was Joshua, there was Anthony, there was Nathan, there was Amir. They're all the same man. It's the same relationship, the same seeking of this approval from this person to seek love, right? And her absolute frustration by not doing that, and she's getting to the point where she's by the end of the chapter. It's not like she's cured and said, "Now I understand how I can be better," but she says, "I know that I deserve love, and I know that what I look for from these men is what I'm looking for from my father." Right? And it's a good introduction. And again, it talks about not only just about her issues, it's just about the struggles of being a Black woman, but the idea that I need this relationship from my father who cannot give it to me, and I seek it in other men, and I seek the same abuse that I get from my father, right? Not like sexual abuse, but the abuse of neglect, not being there, not caring, not being a part of my life, right? And she comes to a realization that, and she asks, says she's working towards seeking love and looking towards seeking people who can return that love, not these successive relationships of men who don't know what to do, or her choosing men who do not and cannot return that same love towards her. Okay? So the two chapters are kind of connected together. Again, keep that running thing in mind. Keep in mind that Eternity is dealing with, being a woman, which is a set of challenges that women face in society. Being a woman of color, right? And also dealing with the fact that uh, she's seeking out to repair a relationship with a man, her father, who she can't repair with because he's not good at it. He just can't do it, right? And therefore, she seeks out men like her father in different extremes, in different ways, but they all have the one thing. They're bad for her. She accepts their badness and tries to redeem them versus letting them go, like her mom did when she goes, and when her mom talks about her father, her mom doesn't disrespect the father, but he goes, look, he's going to disappoint you, right? No matter what you do, he's not going to be the person you want him to be. Okay, are there any questions about these two chapters? Okay, they're a bit heavy. They're very, they can be a bit emotional. They drudge up feelings of our relationship with our parents, and we all have difficulties with our parents. So it's it's a good chapter, but it's a lot of heavy stuff that she kind of examines, and it doesn't end with her resolving the situation. It ends with her saying, "I'm aware of it, and I'm working towards getting better at it." Okay, any questions? Anyone before I stop the recording?